If you would have looked at me then and said something about forecasting or demand planning, I would have looked at you like, can we speak English, please?
Why do you think software companies are unempathetic to e-commerce companies' operations?
The challenge sometimes is I didn't start off the conversation with them of, let me tell you all about this amazing software. I started the conversation. I walked in their warehouse and said, I've never done a bro, I'm out. There's probably some times that I wanted to do a bro, I'm out. And then sometimes I just have to say, like, this is something you're gonna have to trust me on. I've done this a lot. I think sometimes there's a disconnect between
John, can you give us your quick background in ops and systems, like where you come from, your early experience?
So it's interesting, people assume that I've kind of lived in the software world for, that's how I kind of learned all of this stuff. But really, I did start more on the operational side in a company. I worked for an energy drink company that we were in the place of needing something to help manage the business, and the business was growing more and more. And so we brought something, that profane word that everybody out there's, in this space, if you've heard of it, you're like, I know it's profanity, called EDI.
Oh, yeah.
Which brought us to the conversation of needing software to help manage it. So, we'll talk a little bit more about EDI a little bit later, because I think that is a driving factor. I see a lot of businesses kind of in this startup space. They start going, operations start moving, things start getting layered and layered with more and more complication. Yeah. They want to go into a big box store, hit EDI, and then now we're off to, it's got a little chaotic, but.
Got it. So you're at an energy drink company.
Yep.
You guys are doing about $1.5 million in sales.
Yep.
You're the ops guy, which everybody knows, that quintessential ops guy, that he's just the problem solver. Mm-hmm. So then so you needed EDI.
Yeah.
At that time, you were just managing everything on Google Sheets and
spreadsheets, Google Sheets, pieces of paper, Post-it notes, all the things, picking up the phone and calling and saying, hey, when you measured this thing, how much did you put in there? Because we're doing manufacturing also. Mm-hmm. Another piece of complication to add to that conversation is more of the administrative side of the company, marketing, and myself. We were in Virginia, lived in Virginia Beach at the time.
Okay.
The manufacturing and sales and shipping manufacturing and shipping were down in outside of Tampa, Florida. And so trying to manage all of these pieces together from a different place adds another level of complexity to the conversation.
So manufacturing. So you were needing visibility into everything. So walk me through how you guys were even managing everything with purchasing, and then also the manufacturing process, the bill of materials, forecasting and demand planning for those components. Like how was that done?
If you would have looked at me then, obviously now I got a little bit different perspective on that. But if you looked at me then and said something about forecasting or demand planning, I would have looked at you like, can we speak English, please? And I think that's honestly where a lot of businesses, here at LedgerGurus working with companies like this all the time now. I think that's where a lot of businesses are actually at. It's like, I don't know what you're saying to me. You're using words that I have no idea what you mean. You're like, especially with the software space, we're throwing things out there and they're like, I just need to get my orders out on time.
I feel like software companies and even service providing companies aren't as empathetic. See, you can look back and be a little bit empathetic.
For sure.
Because you're like, man, I've been there. I was the operator at $1.5 million where I was like, demand planning. What's that?
What does that even mean?
I'm just, looks like we're out of the caps. I'm going to go and buy some.
Yeah.
So why do you think software companies and maybe even service providing companies are unempathetic to the disorganization of e-commerce companies' operations?
So I think a big part of that conversation is, and I love software companies, love you guys, love other ones out there that, we work with. It's great. I think the challenge sometimes is with any business, your product becomes your baby and it becomes the answer to all the problems. Software is not the answer to all the problems in a business.
I love this perspective.
I tell people all the time, and people who've heard me before probably get sick of this, but a successful business is like a waterfall. We're out here in Utah, some pretty sick waterfalls out here to check out. I was just in Colorado last week and saw really cool, and I'm like, I'm going to take some pictures of this so I can explain what I say. But
we're taking John around to the Utah places, giving him funeral potatoes.
Yes, all the cool Utah places, got it in there, like it. So it's a waterfall. So at the top of the waterfall, there's a river that feeds it, right? Then you got this really cool, beautiful waterfall. And then you've got a lake or a river or stream at the bottom that it all falls into and then moves on. How I explain that in the business is the operations and the operational processes are the river that feeds the waterfall. The waterfall is the software that manages it all. And the accounting is the river at the bottom. So you can't fix the problems in the river at the top from the river at the bottom. It's just all falling in there.
Yeah.
And if you had bad software and processes in there, then all the mess is just going to hit that lake at the bottom. So they all work in tandem with each other.
I really like that perspective. And this is why. So I also don't crap on other platforms. Yeah. Obviously, like Luminous, we have a different take on the market and e-commerce companies and the psyche of why people make decisions. But I really am of the mindset, it's not that the tool is bad.
Yeah.
And I think what you just highlighted is why people in operations have such strong feelings towards tool X. Like, man, SKU Vault sucks. Yeah. Or like, I don't know, LinWorks sucks. Locate sucks. Yeah. Like, it's there's a myriad of different reasons why something could feel like it sucks. And actually, most of them have to do with your processes and the way you're set up.
I mean, I talk to companies all the time. I mean, and it's easier to start with fixing processes. I just came, you and I were just talking about this before, that I was at a company here in Utah and, working with a different software. I didn't start off the conversation with them of, let me tell you all about this amazing software. I started the conversation. I walked in their warehouse and said, I immediately see problems. We need to fix this stuff. We need to clean up your warehouse, not dirty wise, but like we need to organize things in a fashion that makes sense. Now, in the back of my mind, I know how the software is going to function. And so I'm building those processes physically to match what I know is going to function in the software. But I'm not thinking software and software conversation. I need to understand that business and their processes and help them along the way versus just jumping right into software.
Interesting.
But what happens with companies it's easier to start there, but more often where we're at is we're in the middle of a process with a company where they've already been on some software or they've already, kind of maxed out their capacity with spreadsheets and all those other things. And with every company, the software is the problem. It's bad software. It needs to change. I don't know that I've run into one inventory management software that I would say it's bad software. There's some that work better in certain scenarios, or there's some that are designed to be stronger in maybe manufacturing than in pick, pack, and ship or things like that. Yep. I don't know that I've met any bad ones, but if you talk to some of these companies, they're like, this software sucks. And it's not usually because of the software. It's because we didn't spend enough time in the operations before we added the software. We didn't fix the river before we got to the waterfall. We thought putting a waterfall in was going to fix this whole beautiful thing. And you just ended up causing a huge mess. And, and then again, the software is the easy thing to blame because it's a third party. You know what I mean?
Let's do an exercise here because I'm curious. You, with all of your experience now, I mean, you must have implemented dozens of systems, gone to literally hundreds of companies, all doing different things. Multi-channel D2C with Wholesale. You've probably done distribution companies, like multiple industries requiring manufacturing. Maybe just simple, like they have a 3P. I bet you've run into it all, right?
A lot.
Yeah, almost all of it.
Yeah. It never ceases to amaze me. Sometimes I'm like, now this is a new thing. But, it's another challenge to resolve. But
okay, so with John Bottoms, Mr. John Bottoms now, with your head and your mind, all of your experiences, software, how it should work like the back of your hand. Okay, if you went back in time to John Bottoms at the energy drink company, what? Okay, so let's go back. Let's do this exercise. You're back in time, $1.5 million in sales. You're that guy. What are you telling John Bottoms in the warehouse at that time? Like, what's going wrong in your processes at that energy drink company? What's going wrong with the manufacturing? What's going wrong with purchasing? Like, how do you approach that?
So it's very interesting, this conversation, because I've done a lot of study in personality as well. And that plays a huge role in this whole process. And sometimes I always start the conversation with every company is, tell me why you went into business. Like, why'd you do this? Like, and what do you want to get out of it? And a lot of times you can pick up personality things that end up showing up as problems or whatever in the business. So one of the things that I would say is, again, one of my personalities is jump in, fix the problem, figure out a solution, and go for it. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good, but one of the things with a lot of companies, and even John, the energy drink company guy, we were so busy. And every company that I go into, it's like, we're so busy, we're so busy, we're so busy. What I would tell the John of then is just slow down. Know that there's other things and other people out there that can probably help you not be so busy, or maybe busy yourself with things that you want to do, not this chaos that you don't want to do. But again, I have the luxury of now working with probably 75-ish companies or more that I can have that perspective. I wouldn't have been able to have that perspective without living through working with so many companies.
Yeah, that's been a common thread between all the operators that I talk to.
Yeah.
They say the same thing. Once they have the perspective, they're like, man, I wish I just would have like poked my head out of the sand.
Yeah.
Like just bumped it up and kind of looked around like, oh.
Yeah,
like
right.
I could have fixed so many more things.
Yeah, and things like this are always hard in hindsight to look at. But like again, the company I was with this week here, I don't just go into your warehouse and say, you need to do this, and you need to do this, you need to do that, and then go back to my computer. Right. I'm in there with them. Like we're counting inventory together. We're moving boxes, and
that sounds just like Luminous.
Yeah, because it's like we got to get the work done, and I will tell you. And then sometimes I just have to say like, this is something you're gonna have to trust me on. I've done this a lot. Because what happens is and we all do this in a different way. You could probably describe ways that you do this yourself. We all get in our own rut and our personality shows up, and then we think this is the only way that I can survive. Versus saying like, maybe there's somebody out there. I was thinking, as I was driving over about you and I texting each other back and forth about the drop ship, or sorry, the 3PL company. Can't think of their name right now, that I texted you that you were talking about. They aggregate API data into one source.
Trackstar.
Yeah, Trackstar.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could say like, man, I've got to spend all my time figuring out these 3PLs is such a pain where there's a million 3PLs out there. Or I could just text Jared, who I happened to met a few weeks ago, working with our company, and we sat down to lunch, and it's like, I wonder if Jared has ever worked with anybody who did that. And it's been great. You know what I mean? So a lot of times we think I've got to live in my own world. I can't get outside of this space. Software is not going to fix the problem.
I think something really important that you were hitting on before is people in ops, a lot of times they want to be the answer. They want to have the answer. Mm-hmm. Like it's got to come from them.
Yeah.
When it's just like, dude, supply chain, inventory, back-end systems are so vast. Like ask somebody. Somebody's got to know something.
And I'll say from an overall, let's say, and some of these companies are smaller than having this structure, but in companies where you've got owners or kind of executive leaders that are making some of these decisions, like empower your people to do that. Empower your people to have the space to ask the questions and say, hey, go out and do some research. Find some companies that know how to do this. Like you'll probably have conversations with 4 or 5 softwares that before you'll even realize, okay, now I've got something that I can kind of build a process to understand on. Mm-hmm. That's where we really come in. Like I've worked with so many softwares and so many different companies. I was talking about before being on this panel, where I'm kind of the unique guy with a different perspective, even dressed differently. And, one of the things that I realized there is like, it's like, you got to empower people. You got to let people know like, hey, you have the ability to go out and do this thing. You can do it. And versus saying, my way is the end all be all way, and it may cost a little bit of money, it may cost a little bit of time, but sometimes you can really connect to people that are outside of your rut, if you will, and really get some good feedback that'll help you.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a couple of specific questions for you. Since you're the inventory master and you know all these different systems.
I'm like, inventory master. Is he behind me over?
He's over there.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Let's welcome him right now.
Yeah, come on in.
Okay, so before we move on to these specific questions, because I kind of want to dive into the weeds with you.
Yeah.
I think
are we talking about podcast 2.0? We're gonna do this.
Probably.
Yeah.
Before we get into the weeds with like specific pivotal questions in inventory ops, I want you to share what's been the biggest nightmare, warehouse nightmare, kitchen nightmares. Let's do John Bottom's warehouse nightmares.
I have to think about that one.
you don't have to say any names, but like, what
Yeah.
was the worst warehouse you went into and you're just like, bro, I'm out? Like,
Yeah. I've never done a bro, I'm out. There's probably some times that I wanted to do a bro, I'm out. I mean, sometimes too, depending on the software setup. So some maybe feedback for you guys is there's a lot of pressure on going live with the software, and the way some softwares are built cause more unnecessary pressure based on not being able to fix things or whatever. So it's like when you turn that, orders on, if whatever there, some things, if it can't be reversed, there's just a lot of pressure on that. And so sometimes you're up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the night before you've got employees showing up to start picking and packing orders, realizing that. So those are probably more the nightmares than the like crazy challenges. I'm trying to think, with so many companies, everybody kind of has their own little thing. Probably nightmare story, not necessarily operational company, but was, I worked through COVID. I had a lot of companies, people still needed products, people still needed business, and they needed help getting this stuff done. And so I was in the middle of downtown LA, during the height of COVID, like crazy. And I had no idea, like, first of all, the business had a lot of, I'll call it chaos. It was not anything of their own. Actually, COVID kind of precipitated some into it with business, like order volumes being kicked up based on their products. But I mean, I'm in downtown LA staying in a hotel, like no restaurants were even open. And I'm like, like, how are we going to do this? And so the company, I'm working with them trying to figure things out, and like, but that's probably the most chaotic one that comes to mind of,
I remember. So
circumstances.
So I was CEO of Qualtry.
Okay.
And that was during the COVID restrictions. That was rough.
Yeah.
So like that Q4 and then the Q4 after, it was tough, man. Like I can only imagine, because we would scale from like 80 employees to like 300 during Q4. And during COVID, like it was so hard to find people, and sales were through the roof.
Yeah.
And like, so at Qualtry, we had binning issues. Okay. So like that Q4, we literally had so much bins that bins were like going from the warehouse up the stairs to the top. Like it was insane.
Yeah. When sometimes, again, we're going back to the same conversation, like in the moment that you design that process, you're probably like either one of two things, like this is the best process in the world and no one else will ever figure this out. Or the other thing is like,
we're going to have 1,000 bins.
Yeah, right. Or the other thing is like, I got to get bins up there. Quick, do that. And I think those are the two scenarios that companies end up with. And then you do that for about 6 months. And then you get in this mindset, like, there's no way to change this process,
Totally.
But the minute you walk in the door, you as now, Jared, you walk in the door and you're like, why the heck are you doing that? Yeah. It's like, oh, you're right. This is probably a little bit crazy. Exactly. So sometimes I look at myself, I'm like, am I the inventory expert, or am I just the guy that gets to walk into the room and say, why are you doing that? And then come up with a way to try to fix it. So
I love how you approach it, though. It's just like, it's curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing that? Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've seen this and this. What do you think? Yeah. Like, that is such a better way than like, dude, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, right. Well, you look at some of these companies. I was, again, saying this to last week at this conference that I was at. I worked with a company that the wife looked at me with tears in her eyes and was like, I want this business to end. I'm over it. I want more time with my husband. And if this doesn't change, we're getting a divorce. And I'm walking down, I'm like, oh, I'm the inventory guy. You know what I mean? But how much personality is in that? And what she was really saying is, he needs a better way to pick orders. We need a better way to manage our accounting. We need to be more efficient, because my husband is spending more time here and I want him to be in my house with my family. Yeah. So that's the problem. She didn't come to me and say, have you ever heard of Luminous? Do you think that they can help keep my marriage together? You know what I mean?
No, I love how you bring this up, because it's not, softwares won't solve your issues.
No.
I mean, they can solve specific, like you said, there is certain inventory software that is better for specific use cases, but like it's very much the intersection of software and processes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's why people have such strong feelings towards software.
Yeah.
Like, man, this one sucks. Is because they thought it was supposed to solve their problem and they're disappointed when it didn't.
Yeah. And again, I think it goes a lot to, have you fixed your operational processes before you started talking about software? The other piece of it is, did you and whoever you're partnering with to get this done, like, see the whole thing to the end? Yep. Because a lot of times what happens is you're live on the software, have a great day, see you later. And the companies don't feel like they have someone they can lean on and they have something pops up. They do their best with all honesty. And then it just becomes this snowball that we fixed over here just starts snowballing again. And then again, it's the software that's the problem. It's not the operations. So I think, again, a big part of it is you got to spend time in the beginning in the operations, keep the operations in mind when the software is being implemented and being operated in, but then also keep that conversation going. Like, hey, we're wanting to launch a new store. We're now getting into EDI. Like, how can Luminous help me with that? We implemented Luminous. Like, does this keep us off the software? Can this, and because people they don't know the answer to these questions that you and I deal with every day.
Yep.
They're trying to figure out how to get their orders out on time.
Exactly. And which goes to the ad hoc nature of operators. Like they're just trying to get stuff out. They're just trying to get sales. That's it. Which is totally understandable. Okay. Now let's pivot the conversation. Let's go to, so at Luminous, I have my theories on the market and, why a specific inventory system like hasn't taken off and it's going head to head with NetSuite.
Yeah.
But
so you want me to give my opinion on all the softwares I work with? And, no, just kidding.
Maybe that's a 2.0. What I'm actually more curious about is I've kind of bucketed critical decisions or like complexities. It's like crossroads in ops where people make very pivotal decisions that they don't even really understand are pivotal. Yeah. And I want to get your opinion on some of these. Okay. So number one, I am a direct-to-consumer brand. I do in-house fulfillment, so I'm doing my own fulfillment, my own purchasing. I've got my own warehouse. I have maybe one or two pickers. That's it, and they're both pickers. They pack and they ship. I'm using ShipStation. All of a sudden, in order to start increasing visibility, I have a choice. I have pallet racking coming in, and now we have the choices in front of us. We're keeping track of inventory on a spreadsheet, but it's the choice of inventory by warehouse or inventory by bin. And I see that's such a pivotal decision for warehouses. Yeah. What are some things, in your opinion, that this type of company should think of? Like, should I do inventory by warehouse? So in other words, should I just keep track of my on-hand by product in warehouse 1, right? And then I just purchase based on that. And it just deducts when something gets shipped. Or should I do inventory by bin? What are some things that people typically don't think of with that decision right there?
So one of the things I talk about, one of the softwares that we work with is worldwide. They have actually a bigger presence outside of the U.S. than they currently have in the U.S., and they're growing more. And one of the conversations I've had with them a lot is about U.S. e-commerce looks different than it does anywhere else in the world. Amazon has completely changed the way that consumers look at, e-commerce. And what's the name of the game with Amazon? If you get on your computer right now and order something on Amazon because we want, go hiking later, I need some hiking boots. I want those hiking boots to my house by the time I drive to the top of the hill to get to the house in an hour. I expect that from Amazon because they're Amazon. So not only have we built this expectation with Amazon, but that same expectation that Amazon has so well by building their whole logistics network been able to deliver on, I now expect that from every company that I order anything online from.
Right.
So the name of the game in the e-commerce operation space is get the orders out. From the minute the order comes in, you've got to immediately be getting it out. It needs to happen within hours, not within days. And if you start having it happen within days, you've now got customer service problems.
Your brand identity and your brand perception is 100% tied to your ability to get stuff out fast.
Yep, 100%. And the ability, if you're selling, let's just say you're selling like seller fulfilled Prime on Amazon, you have to get it out within a certain time period. They're going to shut you down.
Yeah, you will be dinged.
Exactly. And so in that conversation, one of the things that I tell companies all the time is, can you within minutes take me to the product that somebody orders? And if the answer to that question is no, then you need bin locations. And if you're going to grow to have more and more SKUs, more and more products that you're going to have, you need to be able to get to the inventory just like this.
So what do you say to those people that because see, I agree with you, but what do you say to an operator who's just like, but bin locations, that means we might have to do some pick and pack, and then now we're going to have to count and make sure our inventory is accurate for every single bin. John, isn't it easier just to like, I just have a general warehouse number, just deducts? Like, doesn't that keep us faster?
Yes, I will say there's two different conversations. We talked earlier about like the leadership team versus the operator. Sometimes certain decisions need to be made by the leadership team and filtered down, because sometimes when I'm in my space as an operator of operating, it's hard for me to care about the bigger picture because my job is to operate. You know what I mean? So I think there has to be a good relationship. And sometimes you got to, as the software implementer or as the, operations consultant, you got to help bridge some of those gaps sometimes between decision makers and operators. But
so that's interesting, actually.
Yeah.
How have you done that before? So like, for example, say you're on the ground floor, like with this example right here, man, guys, your time to fulfillment, your time to fulfill an order it's a lot longer than it needs to be.
Yeah.
We need to do inventory by bin so that we can really dial this process and get visibility. Have you had to go up to the C-suite and like?
So I try to, most of the conversations, especially before we start doing work, get everybody involved. I want the C-suite there, but I also want the operators there. And I want to build, and this is, again, we're getting into really some deep personality stuff, and I've done a lot of study in this. So this is hard to learn without doing some practice and study. And I think I want to build an environment in that conversation where we can be open enough with both leadership and with the operators to say, let's communicate the real problems here. And a lot of companies, that doesn't exist. A lot of times the operators are afraid to say to their boss, like, hey, I'm sick of having to do this. I try to facilitate a conversation where everybody can say, it pisses me off that this thing happens, even though
you're nailing something, because at least in my experience, that's something I've always heard.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with an operator. I'm meeting with him and we're trying to change a process. Number one thing out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Oh my God. CEO X or executive X, oh, he doesn't like that. I'm like, who cares if he doesn't like it? Like, let's go and talk to him.
Yeah.
Oh, no. There's like this, it's like you're really going into uncharted territories where like, oh, clearly there isn't a culture here where you can challenge the big man.
For sure. And so then that gives me and my snarky personality, when that comes out sometimes, of, oh, I'm going to challenge. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, because I know, and I've told people this before, like, if you're not going to let me do what I know is going to help you, like, I might as well go on an airplane and leave.
Yeah.
There's no point in me being here. Why are you paying me? I don't want you to pay me for something that I know is going to be a bad outcome. And I get really engaged in the companies because, contrary to, maybe what people out there might think, I don't care about the software that much. I care about the software because the software is going to help us fix operational things. It's going
to make it scalable, and it's going to actually digitize
and we're going to solve the problems, and we're going to think through it, and we're going to maybe even fix some of this bad conversation stuff that we didn't even know existed within our culture stuff that we didn't know existed in the company until we started digging into some of the operational stuff. And so the software then helps us manage all that. And so what's really fun is working with these companies and helping to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another inventory question. All right. So I'll give you a profile real fast.
Okay.
All right. So this is a company who their first 3 years in business, it's been all D2C. Maybe they've done some Amazon. Warehouse is decently dialed. Like, they do inventory by bin. They have basic pick and pack. Inventory is relatively accurate. They now have the choice where, like, we can start doing specialty wholesale. So they have like a bunch of retailers around who are like, they've all committed to buy 100 units. And they're like, man. So it's not EDI, not that profane word.
Okay.
Just like specialty wholesale.
Yeah.
How do you merge wholesale inventory and sales into your D2C?
Yeah.
And how do you merge that into your operations? Because it's, again, like two different beasts. The forecasting of wholesale, how you
Sales
handle inventory, how you handle shipping. How would you recommend to clients who are just starting to go wholesale? What are some things that they're probably not thinking of?
One thing I'd start with is more isn't always better. and complex isn't always better. More complexity isn't always better. I think generally what I see a lot of startup e-commerce businesses do is just add more and more and more and more layers. So it's like, these people over here are doing wholesale, I need to do wholesale. These people over here are doing Amazon, I need to do Amazon. These people over here are doing, they're using Fair. These people over here
over here started subscription. We need to start subscription. It's like, and before you know it, you are a complex,
super complex. And that's how you have to spend a lot of money, a lot of time kind of rewinding from that.
Yeah.
And figuring out like, how do we get this thing back on the road? So I would say like, take a pause. When you get an idea of something like that, take a pause, maybe bring some team around you to say like, hey, is this a really good idea before you jump into it? Going into your scenario though, some of the things that, let's say we've taken that pause and we figured out, yeah, we can do it. Having the right software to manage these complex pieces is really important. For example, you're probably not going to have the same price on Amazon that you're going to have to a wholesaler, wholesale company. How do you manage that? How do you decide what that price is?
Payment terms too.
And again, like I spend a lot of time with companies saying, let's look at the data. Amazon is a good place where a lot of times people, if they're not careful, can really lose money because they don't have the data to look and see with the delivery fees and with the, complexities of getting it to Amazon and labeling and all the things that go into the Amazon space. You're actually losing money every time you sell this product, but they don't have the knowledge to be able to put those data pieces together. So I think
the processes and the software
for sure
to actually give that visibility.
And again, I think if there's a theme that we're hitting, it's operational processes, the right software.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest piece with this wholesale company that you're talking about. Do you have the processes and know that you can do this and what's your strategy behind it? And then do you have the software that can manage the process on the back end? Mm-hmm. And don't just jump in. Yes. Don't just say to, Macy's, yes, Macy's is interested. That's great. That's really exciting. Take that pause and say like, how am I going to manage this? When they give me the order for 500,000 units, because they want to send it to all their places.
Otherwise, you'll be coming to Luminous or LedgerGurus 3 months later, and you're just
How about Luminous and LedgerGurus? How about that?
Yeah,
Is that
there
good?
we go.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we go.
No, you will be coming to us a couple months later where you're just like, man, like ripping your hair out. Like everything was so easy, but we're doing this QuickBooks invoice and it's not aggregating with my direct consumer inventory. And you're like, well, yeah, no, duh, because you're invoicing on QuickBooks and it's not pushing to your OMS. Like, and it's all, it really is like stopping and pausing. Like, okay, direct consumer is way different than wholesale. Mm-hmm. I need to have like a customer database, pricing.
Yeah.
How am I going to invoice this? How's that good? And this is another thing, like most e-commerce companies, they'll invoice first rather than like doing a sales order first.
Yeah.
So it's
because you know why? Because that's how QuickBooks built the process.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's like, again, I think sometimes they
prioritize the collection of revenue first.
Yeah. But I don't even know if it's that so much. There's probably some of that. I also think that it's like, I was doing the best I knew how to do. I jumped into QuickBooks because that was easy. I went online and said, here it is. And
that's probably more on. It's like, this is how I create an invoice in a software I already use.
Yeah.
Like,
if I had to summarize probably every company I've ever worked with, it would be, I was just doing the best thing I knew how. I didn't have anybody that, could walk in and say, did you know that there's software out there that'll do that for you and save you 3 hours? Or whatever the thing is. I'm just trying to get by, All
right. Couple questions because we are running a little bit low on time.
Yeah.
What is your take? How familiar are you with, for example, if I say Atlassian or HubSpot, these companies?
I know HubSpot. I don't know the other one you mentioned.
So HubSpot was a big disruptor to Salesforce.
Yeah.
They're basically CRM.
Yeah.
For sales enablement for SMBs.
Yeah.
Atlassian, that's more like product management side. So like I deal with them a lot on Luminous. Okay. So like managing developer sprints and product management. How do you build things out? Mm-hmm. So they really disrupted the market for small and medium sized businesses, like software businesses. And I personally, I'm still waiting for that disruptor. Right now, my perspective of what I see in the inventory, supply chain, purchasing, like back end, for the modern e-commerce business, everybody thinks that you have to go to NetSuite or Sage or Dynamics 365 or, big, massive
Complicated,
ERP. Why do you think nobody's totally emerged and grabbed market share like Atlassian or HubSpot have in their respective industries?
It's a good question. I think part of the big software conversation is obviously the bigger the software, the bigger the marketing budget. You know what I mean? And so when people think of the ERP inventory management space, somebody like NetSuite comes to mind because what pops up first because they have a bigger marketing budget. You know what I mean?
Just outspend you.
Yeah, right. I think that's a big piece why they are more well known. I would venture to say, and I've worked with people on NetSuite. I've never implemented NetSuite, but I've worked with a lot of people either coming off NetSuite or I would venture to say that, especially in the small to medium business space, there's a lot more softwares out there that really can get you more pinpointed to what you really need than the big machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes there's a disconnect between, and again, if we go back to this conversation, operational processes and software, there's a disconnect between the warehouse and the software developer. Like, I've said this to a company recently that we work with. I said, we need to get you in the warehouse because you're arguing with me about a point that if you saw this, you would stop this argument. Like, because this is not how people do business. It's great in the software world. Yeah. It's great, like that you spent 3 months developing this technology and it's really cool in theory. It will not work in everyday practice. So I think if there were a software out there who would say like, I'm going to prioritize the customer and how they do things first, and probably, I don't want to disparage softwares by saying they don't value their customers by any means. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is like the actual things that they're struggling with and seeing it.
I feel like it also goes back to what you're saying at the beginning, which is software companies, and it comes out in marketing.
Yeah.
It comes out in their marketing, like best WMS, best OMS.
Yeah.
Awesome wholesale. Like I'm thinking of these like keywords that you use for PPC, but like really most operators are actually just like super niche problem X. Like, how do I get my wholesale order invoice into my inventory software?
How do I stop selling out on Amazon?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like that's kind of, I feel like this is my theory. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah.
Most of the inventory systems that came, between like 2011, 2015, there was a big boom in inventory systems that were founded then. Like Sin7, LinWorks. Well, LinWorks is like 2008. 3PL Central, SKU Vault. Like there's a big boom in inventory systems, and it was just the big boom in e-commerce. It's like, there's a space here. What I think is, a lot of these inventory systems, they came out at that time, and the whole thesis at that time was like, build this system in the cloud. I personally believe that they all tried to kind of just rebuild NetSuite in the cloud without their own take on the market. Like, but why are you rebuilding NetSuite?
Yeah.
Like, and I think what you're hitting at is the why.
Yeah.
Like, operators, e-commerce operators, they don't know what WMS, IMS, EDI. They don't know all
e-commerce
the forms.
fulfillment. They're like, what does that even mean? And I've seen you go out and look at softwares, and one of their big selling points is multi-channel e-commerce fulfillment. And if you go to the warehouse I was at yesterday, they're going to say, "Excuse me, what do you mean?"
No, I was just demoing a company yesterday, and like, sometimes you just throw out acronyms that you don't even like. It's so common. Like I was saying EDI, and she shared her screen and she was Googling EDI, and it was hilarious. So it's like that really is the case. So like those like V2 inventory systems that came out between 2008 2015, they really just kind of rebuilt NetSuite, and because of that, like you can tell that they just rebuilt NetSuite in the cloud. And I think somebody who's going to challenge the status quo is exactly like you're saying, is challenging. They're building a system for operators. like that
One of the things-
perspective in the warehouse.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about Locate earlier, is kind of where I got my start into this space. And one of the things that I really appreciated about Locate and their perspective is they started their company. They were consultants on, another software. And they learned all of these places where the software didn't do exactly right. And they said, we want to fix the things for our customers that we've been fixing on the back end to make this work for the customer. We want to build a software that fixes the things for the customers. So they were really deep into how do their customers work? How do they function? How do their operations work? What are their processes? And then built software to kind of manage that.
Well, it's because like NetSuite was built. I say NetSuite.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't stand NetSuite. We're going after them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you can stay. You can stay.
Stay neutral.
Stay neutral on this one, but I can't stand them.
Yeah.
Their system it's very antiquated.
Yeah,
it's very rigid. Like need to create sales order, then create invoice, then go to warehouse group X, then go to pick and pack. Like, you know what I mean? So the Locate guys, because I have seen their system, it's actually sick.
Yeah,
I don't understand why they sold their business. Like,
we won't talk about that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they had a sick platform. That sunset and left a lot of people. Good, because it was such a sick platform. I was like, no.
Yeah.
So I feel like what they were getting at was like the things they had to fix was where the intersection of the new e-commerce processes were not aligning with the rigid, antiquated, clunky systems.
Yeah.
Like e-commerce companies don't necessarily do it that way. So they built things a little bit more flexible. You still have to be rigid to keep processes, but
and I think the other piece with a NetSuite or an SAP or these big legacy platforms, a lot of times it's a huge stretch financially for a company to even make that decision. And I feel like a lot of softwares have said, if our customer is X, we need to live in the world that our customer lives in and not say, customer, come to my world. And I think if you can learn to do that, and you got to balance the both. I mean, you got to be a successful company as well. You got to be able to keep the lights on and pay your employees, and hopefully make some money along the way. I mean, we're all in it to do the same thing, but if you tell all the customers, you've got to come to my world and you've got to spend a little more than your budget or a lot more than your budget in order to be successful, people are going to do it, but they can't sustain that, you know? And I honestly think, we could have a whole podcast episode on this topic. One of the biggest pieces in picking the right software is, can the company manage it?
Yes.
And what I've seen from a lot of people on NetSuite, for example, is it's just too complicated. Because I'm the operator, I just got to get my orders out on time.
Exactly.
You gave me this big thing. Yeah.
So in Luminous terminology, we say friction. Like it adds too much friction.
Yeah.
And it's like one thing that NetSuite implementations or e-commerce companies implementing NetSuite, it's notorious for is they don't understand the financial burden.
For sure.
Where like you might have a CFO come in and be like, oh, I want to implement NetSuite, but they're not okay, being able to totally get off of QuickBooks and go to NetSuite for financials, you probably have to hire like 2 or 3 full-time people now.
Yeah, right. At minimum.
Whereas at least on QuickBooks, you could do that with one person part-time.
For sure.
Or
partner with somebody like LedgerGurus and we'll take care of it all for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Seriously. No, that really is the case. And then also with people underestimating, like, oh yeah, we really need to dial in our warehouse for scale. But like, okay, well, you do realize what used to be maybe like a 3-step process now just went to like 7 to keep everything updated.
Yeah. And the reason people are probably coming to conversation, we talked about this earlier, the number one thing I hear, I'm just too busy. So don't take their processes and their functionality that's supposed to make them less busy and make it more complicated and more busy. And that's what ends up happening is you've got to make it more complicated and busy to work in the big platform versus saying, let's simplify things and make it easier for you to do your job. Because that's what they're looking for anyway. They're not coming to you wanting more complexity,
Something that I think is so ripe right now, which we've talked a little bit about this before, but so Luminous we're gonna be building our own OMS.
Oh, sweet.
We already have order management functionalities, but like our actual own standalone OMS, because Yeah, I really think the market is ripe for disruption with everything going on with ShipStation right now.
Yeah.
And how they don't really update their platform, but everybody uses it.
Yeah.
Man, like a conversation that I would love to have with you. Not even we'll do it offline, not on the podcast, but like the question being, how can you take a pick, pack, and ship flow and make it as simple as possible? Like the least amount of rigid. Like how can you do these massive fulfillment batches with like the least amount of steps?
Yeah, and I have found there's no one software that does it perfectly, in my opinion. Maybe I just haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
But what I have found, you mentioned ShipStation. ShipStation has tons of automation capabilities, but standalone, they can't get you all the way there. Yep. But if you hook ShipStation with another, OMS, IMS platform and build some automation triggers over here on this side in the platform that then picks up on the ShipStation side and they do what they do well, where I found that you can really do some really cool things with companies is this layering effect with different softwares that really do well. Like you don't need to be the perfect expert at how 3PLs work.
Yep.
But what if you partner well with a company that's where they spend all of their effort?
Oh, that's 100% how. So like with Luminous, because we have a lot of clients who have 3PLs and they want visibility. So instead of us building these massive integrations into freaking like every single 3PL system, instead we searched and we found Trackstar. Like Trackstar is an API. So now we don't have to be the solution for everything. Like we go through Trackstar, and so now we can offer visibility to multiple 3PLs and multiple WMSs.
I think the question too that we need to ask is, how do people find out that people like you and I exist? Because they're sitting in their warehouse ready to give up on their business or ready to hire more people unnecessarily or whatever. How do we let them know, like, there's a better way? Like, we can help you with this, and
it's a conversation I had. So I had with Emerson Hammer he was the COO at Nomadic, or VP of supply chain.
Yeah.
And so he was telling me his theory, because I agreed, like, I want to get in front of somebody, because I'm always consultative when I get in front of them. I'm never like, we're gonna produce 20% extra efficiency and we're gonna save you $62,500. It's like, no, I'm just gonna like listen to you and I'll let you know what I think. I'll even tell you if our system isn't good. And it's hard to get in front of operators because, like you were saying at the beginning, their heads down.
Yeah,
they're busy, and like that's the question, like, how do you build an ops community that get their head out of the sand and you make an environment where they know they're not being sold?
Yeah.
That's the question I'm trying to answer. I don't know the answer to that. This is part of this podcast, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes, and this is human nature for sure, it's like if I have information, more like our human condition wants us to like hold it. I think the more information we can get out there to people, it gives us all more opportunity. The fact that, I just worked with a company and increased their using ShipStation and using, inventory management software, I just completely changed the way that they pick, pack, and ship orders and went from probably, we'll say 30 to 40 minutes pick time to less than a minute, which is
awesome.
Major change for this company.
Sick.
You know what I mean? Like that's nothing proprietary. I don't get paid by ShipStation to do that. I don't it's just like, how can I take that information? And it wasn't anything complicated.
Yeah.
We physically fixed some stuff in their warehouse.
And it wasn't like it was just together. It was just the system. Like, no, you came in and you're like, why is this? You understood what's going on. Like, this will work. This will work. New processes, boom.
And really what people are buying from both you and I, they're not buying software from you and consulting service from me. They're buying confidence. Like, can this software
That's actually the number one thing I say all the time.
Yeah. It's like, do you walk into my warehouse? Do you know what you're talking about? How many people out there say that I
actually,
did this?
The word that I say is certainty.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. Like, that's anybody who's bought Luminous, they're actually buying certainty that we're not going to just like throw them a software and be like, self-onboard, here's an account manager.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's like, we're like, no, we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
No matter what it takes.
Right.
So I agree.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So how do you make sure that certainty remains? Because as you grow as a company, you're going to obviously have less and less bandwidth for getting in there in the niche, intimate details with every company and all that stuff. So how do you scale in a way that continues to allow certainty and for people to feel confident in what you're doing as you do that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
Yeah.
I think the key there is so at Luminous, I'm not focused on vanity metrics.
Yeah.
I don't care about our number of users growing. Like, honestly, like my VC, like they know that too. They know like if I want to nail it before we scale it.
Yeah.
And if scaling it means turning into this massive marketing company that just blows in thousands of clients a month and has massive churn, that's not going to be Luminous.
Yeah.
That's not my vision.
Yeah.
So that won't happen. I think I'll answer that question as we go, but it will not look like that. It won't look like marketing, massive amounts of free users, churn.
Yeah.
That's not the vision. I think the vision is actually, I've always had a belief that there's an intersection between software and processes.
Yeah.
And I will only scale. I'm never just going to scale free users.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to actually scale the service side of the business with the software, because I feel like that's how you win in the end.
Yeah. And I think probably partnerships are a big part of that. Like us working together, you know what I mean? Like, do you really need to learn how to do these certain processes in a warehouse, or can we partner together? And I say, like, let me jump in there and fix this. I've done it now with 85 companies or whatever the number is at the point we had this conversation.
Agreed. That's been like nonstop. Brendan and I have been talking behind the scenes. Yeah. Like, man, how can we partner with LedgerGurus? Like, they know what they're talking about. And not only. Okay. By the way, Brittany bringing you in was freaking brilliant.
Yeah, she's awesome.
It's freaking brilliant because and so the way we see it now is, so we get a lot of questions about accounting.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is we just like, oh, we need you to push these as a journal entry like this, and we just do it, and then it ends up being like wrong or something. like not wrong. It's just like, you talk to an expert like Brittany, they're like, oh no, we probably wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's finding pillars in each of the spaces like implementation and accounting, and partnering with them.
Yeah.
It's a big part of our strategy too.
Even within LedgerGurus, I mean, I don't know everything. I have learned a lot. Like I tell people all the time, and Brittany, when she listens to this, will probably be laughing right now because I tell everybody I'm not an accountant, but I end up teaching people accounting. You know what I mean? It's because I've learned it from practice, not from education. Yeah. And so from, working with all these companies and all of that. And so, but the cool thing with our team at LedgerGurus is we have a sales tax division that like are experts in sales tax. We have, client accounting services that are experts in how to set up your chart of accounts and how to build these processes around your accounting to get you. We have experts in having the conversation with you to know what you should do based on looking at your financial numbers. And now with adding our team, there's experts in the conversation to say, this is how you should set up your inventory business. This is the software we should use. I don't go and tell people like, let me tell you how you should set up your sales tax. I say, let me partner with our internal sales tax team and external partners like Avalara. We work with Avalara a ton.
That's why I think I'm so drawn to LedgerGurus and Brittany, was just because I could sense you guys, like very much like us, you're driven by what works for the client, and it doesn't have to be you with everything. Like it's like you just want things to work. Because same thing with Luminous, we know at the end of the day what's going to bring value and stickiness to the software is just that things are working. And that things are going well.
That you care about the outcome for the customer. You know what I mean? Brittany and I, we were on a conversation last night about a customer, and we were talking about how excited we were that we were able to create this change around their accounting processes and their inventory and all of this stuff. We're not talking about the financials of the deal and how we built. Nobody cares about that. I mean, we care because we got to keep the lights on. Right. But, like with Stephen and Brittany, we're often having conversations around, this is really cool what we get to do. We get to change. I mean, even with you guys, you get to change the trajectory of a business. Somebody might be out of business next month because they started EDI and got in over their head. You know what I mean? We keep beating up on EDI today, but but you get to really change people's lives and get them to where they want to be in their business. That's why, again, their founding story is so important to this operational conversation, because where do they want to be?
Yes.
Because getting there is, maybe it's a sales tax conversation.
That's also why I always harp on, before I close a deal with a company, I always, literally the biggest thing that I push on the decision makers that choose Luminous is like, look, at the end of the day, what's probably most important to you is our why. And like, I'll send them a video on like why Luminous exists and why we care about solving these problems in e-commerce. So it's like, we're going to be around and we're looking to solve these problems. I'm not just like throwing you in and you're part of like a Vandy metric of you're 1,050th user and we're at 50 million in ARR. Like,
yeah, right. And even in just full disclosure, when, you and I we met Stacy from our team, and Brittany set up lunch, and they're, like, oh, we've got this, cool software we want you to talk to. And we think they'd be good as part of kind of the softwares that, we work with a bunch of softwares, like you said before. And my first thought was, oh God, another software. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how many of them are there out there, and who's going to, but what made the connection for me was meeting you in person, hearing your story and what gets you excited, and just seeing, even just like when we started having conversation around operational issues, I mean, you're leaning in and you're getting excited, and I love that. And so for me, that's rare to see that out there in the software space. So it's like, I like Jared. I like his energy and what he's doing. Maybe I don't even know enough about the software yet, which I don't. We're learning still. I'm calling you saying like, hey, what do you do in this space? But like your energy and it's how you get excited around the things that like we get excited about, I think is a perfect way to align. So
totally agree, man.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps it for now. I think we're